The courtroom was dead silent. The cameras rolled, broadcasting the scene to the world. Judge Raymond Lancaster leaned back in his chair, a smug grin on his face. His gavel tapped the bench lightly, a gesture meant to re-establish his control. "You think you're smart, don't you?" he sneered, staring down at the young black teen standing before him. "Tell me, Mr. Carter, if you're so intelligent, why are you here in my courtroom?" The boy, 17-year-old Elijah Carter, remained calm. He adjusted his tie, his expression unreadable. His mother, sitting in the front row, gripped her hands together so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She knew what was happening. Everyone in the room did. The judge wasn't just trying to pass a verdict. He was trying to humiliate her son. The audience chuckled, some whispering among themselves. They had seen this judge pull stunts like this before. He was known for embarrassing defendants, making an example of them, especially if they came from the wrong side of town. But Elijah wasn't just any defendant. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Your Honor," he said, his voice smooth but firm, "I'd like to introduce Exhibit A." The judge raised an eyebrow. "And what, pray tell, is Exhibit A?" Elijah unfolded the paper and held it up for everyone to see. "It's your ruling from 5 years ago, where you sentenced a white teen who committed the exact same offense as me to only community service. Meanwhile, you're trying to send me away for 5 years." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The camera zoomed in on the document. The prosecutor shifted in his seat. Even the bailiff, who had been standing motionless, blinked in surprise. Judge Lancaster's face turned red. "How did you research, sir?" Elijah's eyes locked onto the judge's. "And now, the entire world can see the truth." The courtroom erupted. Reporters outside scrambled to break the story. News anchors were already calling it live, analyzing the racial bias that had just been exposed. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order! Order in this court!" But it was too late. The cameras had captured everything, and Elijah Carter had just turned the tables on the man who thought he could break him. The morning had started like any other. Elijah sat at the kitchen table, nervously stirring his cereal. His mother, a hard-working nurse who worked double shifts, sipped her coffee, watching him with concern. "Are you ready for today?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yeah." But inside, he wasn't sure. 2 months ago, he had been arrested for something he didn't even do. He and his friends were hanging out near a convenience store when the police arrived. Apparently, someone had broken into the store the night before, and the officer, without asking questions, had decided that Elijah fit the description. His mother fought hard to get a fair trial, but when she heard that Judge Lancaster would be presiding, her heart sank. "You know what they say about him," her friend Gloria had whispered. "He's made it his mission to lock up young black boys." That was why, the night before the trial, Elijah stayed up researching. He combed through public court records, searching for anything that could prove what his mother feared. And when he found the case of Jason Whitmore, a white teenager who had committed a similar crime and received a slap on the wrist, he knew he had something big. Now, standing in front of Judge Lancaster, Elijah could see the rage in his eyes. The judge's face twisted into something ugly. "This is my courtroom, and I will not be challenged," the judge bellowed. Elijah didn't flinch. The audience, stunned by what they had just witnessed, turned to see how the judge would respond. But before he could say another word, one of the reporters in the back stood up, holding a microphone. "Judge Lancaster," she called out, "do you deny that this document is real?" Silence. The judge's mouth opened, then closed. He was trapped, and he knew it. Another journalist shouted, "If what Elijah Carter is saying is true, do you believe you have been fair in your past rulings?" Judge Lancaster turned to the bailiff. "Remove all cameras from this courtroom." But it was too late. The trial had just begun, but already, it was bigger than just Elijah Carter. It was about justice. It was about exposing a system designed to break kids like him. And Elijah wasn't going to back down. Just as the cameras were being removed, the doors to the courtroom swung open. A man in a dark suit walked in, his badge shining under the fluorescent lights. He was followed by 3 others, each carrying briefcases. The entire courtroom turned to look at them. The man stepped forward and spoke in a deep, authoritative voice. "Judge Lancaster," he said, "we need to have a word with you." Immediately, the courtroom gasped. The judge's face drained of color. Elijah's heart pounded. Something was happening. Something big. And whatever it was about to change everything. The tension in the courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Judge Lancaster's hands gripped the bench, his knuckles turning white. His face, already red with embarrassment from Elijah Carter's revelation, was now drained of all color as the man in the dark suit approached. The cameras might have been ordered out, but everyone watching from home had already seen enough. Social media was on fire. Reporters outside the courthouse were shouting into their microphones, updating the world on the explosive scene unfolding inside. Elijah stood still, his heart pounding. He had expected the judge to be furious, maybe even to lash out. But this? He hadn't anticipated a group of suited men barging in, demanding a word with Lancaster. "Who are you?" the judge snapped, trying to regain his authority. The man in the lead reached into his pocket and pulled out an official badge. The seal of the Department of Justice gleamed under the courtroom lights. "My name is Special Agent Jonathan Briggs," the man said, his voice steady. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." A ripple of gasps spread across the courtroom. The judge stiffened. "The FBI?" he echoed, his voice suddenly weaker. "Yes, sir," Agent Briggs continued, glancing at the stunned audience before returning his gaze to Lancaster. "We have been investigating multiple cases of judicial misconduct, and based on recent findings, we believe it's in the best interest of justice that you step down from this trial." Murmurs turned into a low roar. Reporters outside were shouting even louder now. Elijah's mother covered her mouth with her hands. Judge Lancaster's jaw clenched. "This is my courtroom. You have no right to." "We have every right," Agent Briggs interrupted. "And if you resist, we have no problem taking this to the Judicial Review Board." The courtroom was dead silent again. Lancaster glared at Briggs, then at Elijah, his fury barely contained. His carefully constructed world was cracking right in front of him. Elijah, still standing at the defendant's table, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had just wanted a fair trial. He hadn't expected to trigger a full-blown FBI investigation. "This is ridiculous," Lancaster spat, but his voice lacked confidence now. "This boy is on trial for a crime, and I'm the judge. I will not let this nonsense continue." Agent Briggs remained unfazed. He glanced over at Elijah and gave him a knowing look, one that told him to stay calm. "We aren't here to disrupt the trial," Briggs said smoothly. "We're here to ensure it remains fair." A moment of unbearable silence passed. Then, Lancaster leaned forward, narrowing his eyes at Elijah. "You think you've won?" he hissed under his breath, low enough that only Elijah could hear. "You're just a boy. The system will eat you alive." Elijah's blood ran cold, but he refused to look away. He took a deep breath and leaned in slightly, keeping his voice just as low. "I'm not scared of you," he said, "and neither is the truth." The judge's nostrils flared, but before he could say another word, the courtroom doors swung open again. This time, a woman entered, dressed in a sleek navy blue skirt suit, her heels clicking against the floor with purpose. She carried a leather folder, her expression unreadable. But when she stopped near the front of the courtroom, she turned her piercing gaze toward Judge Lancaster. "I apologize for the interruption," she said, her voice cool but authoritative. "My name is Rebecca Hayes. I'm the district attorney for this county." Another wave of murmurs. "The DA?" Elijah's heart pounded even harder now. What was going on? Hayes turned toward Agent Briggs and gave him a slight nod before looking at Judge Lancaster. "I've been reviewing some cases involving your rulings, Judge Lancaster," she said. "It appears we have a problem." The judge scoffed. "This is outrageous. You're all out of line." But Hayes wasn't backing down. She opened her leather folder, pulled out a stack of papers, and held them up. "Over the last 5 years, there's been a disturbing pattern in your sentencing," she said. "Black and brown defendants receive the harshest penalties, while white defendants in similar cases are given lighter sentences. And thanks to Mr. Carter's quick thinking today, we now have a very public example." Elijah's stomach clenched. He glanced at his mother, who looked as shocked as he felt. The judge's lips curled in disgust. This is a witch hunt. Hayes ignored him. We will be conducting a full investigation into your courtroom practices, she continued, her tone razor-sharp. Effective immediately. The entire courtroom exploded into chaos. People stood up. Some gasped. Others whispered excitedly. The reporters who had been forced to leave the courtroom were now being let back in. Judge Lancaster slammed his gavel, but it was useless. Agent Briggs took a step forward. Your Honor, we strongly advise you to recuse yourself from this case while the investigation is underway. Lancaster's chest rose and fell rapidly. He looked furious, but also trapped. Elijah held his breath. Would the judge fight back? Would he throw the case out in a final act of revenge? For the first time since stepping into the courtroom, Elijah felt something shift. Power. For once, the power wasn't in the judge's hands. It was in the truth. And the truth was staring Lancaster in the face. The judge exhaled sharply through his nose. He looked out at the audience, at the cameras, at the journalists scribbling furiously. He looked at Agent Briggs, then at D.A. Hayes. Finally, his eyes landed on Elijah again. For a split second, something flashed in his expression. Fear. Then, in a voice that barely masked his rage, Lancaster growled, "Fine." He tossed his gavel onto the bench, stood up, and stormed toward the door. As he passed Agent Briggs, he muttered something under his breath. The moment the doors slammed shut behind him, the courtroom erupted again. But Elijah didn't move. He couldn't. He had done it. He had taken on a powerful, biased judge. And he had won. But as the cheers and murmurs continued around him, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "This isn't over." Not by a long shot. And deep down, he knew it was right. Because Judge Lancaster wasn't the kind of man to go down quietly. And whatever came next, it was going to be even bigger. The news broke before Judge Lancaster even left the courthouse. Reporters rushed to their cameras, their voices filled with urgency. We are witnessing history unfold here at the county courthouse. Moments ago, Judge Raymond Lancaster was forced to step down from presiding over the trial of 17-year-old Elijah Carter after allegations of racial bias surfaced in his past rulings. The situation escalated when the FBI and the district attorney's office intervened, citing an ongoing investigation into the judge's conduct. Elijah sat frozen at the defendant's table, his mind still trying to process what had just happened. Around him, people buzzed with energy. His lawyer, a public defender named Mr. Caldwell, wiped sweat from his forehead, shaking his head in disbelief. "Kid, I don't know how you pulled that off," he muttered, "but that was some genius-level maneuvering." Elijah didn't respond. He just glanced at his mother, who was sitting in the front row, tears in her eyes. She rushed to him the moment the judge disappeared from sight. "Oh, baby," she whispered, pulling him into a tight hug. "I am so proud of you." Elijah hugged her back, feeling the warmth of her embrace settle his nerves. But then, something else settled in too. Fear. Judge Lancaster might have left the courtroom, but Elijah knew this wasn't the end. This man had power, friends, connections, and something told Elijah that he wasn't going to take his humiliation lightly. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Elijah and his mother walked out, pushing past the swarm of reporters waiting at the entrance. Microphones were shoved toward his face. "Elijah, how does it feel to have exposed a judge? Elijah, what do you say to people who claim this was planned? Do you think Judge Lancaster will retaliate?" That last question made his heart stutter. His mother wrapped an arm around him protectively. "No comment," she said firmly, guiding him away. They finally reached their car. The moment Elijah shut the door, he exhaled loudly, his body sinking into the seat. "That was crazy," he muttered. His mother started the car but didn't pull out of the parking lot just yet. Instead, she turned to face him. "Elijah," she said carefully, "I need you to understand something." He frowned. "What?" She gripped the steering wheel, her fingers tense. "That man is dangerous." Elijah swallowed. He knew she was right. Judge Lancaster had been exposed in front of the entire world. He had been humiliated on live television. People like him didn't just forget things like that. "They're going to assign a new judge to your case," his mother continued. "We'll get a fair trial now." Elijah wanted to believe that. He really did. But something in the pit of his stomach told him that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 3 nights later, Elijah woke up to the sound of tires screeching outside his house. His heart pounded as he sat up, his room dimly lit by the glow of his alarm clock. 2:47 a.m. He crept to his window and peeked outside. A black SUV was parked across the street, engine running. Something wasn't right. Elijah? His mother's voice was groggy as she cracked open his bedroom door. "Mom," he whispered. "There's a car outside." She frowned, stepping next to him to look. Her body tensed immediately. "Get away from the window," she said quickly, grabbing his wrist. "Mom, what's going on?" She didn't answer. Instead, she hurried to her phone and dialed a number. "Gloria," she whispered into the receiver. "There's a black SUV outside my house. It's just sitting there." Elijah's stomach twisted. "Who's Gloria?" he asked. His mother hesitated before answering. "She used to work at the courthouse," she said. "She told me a long time ago that Judge Lancaster had ways of handling things outside of court." Elijah felt his throat go dry. "Mom," he said slowly, "you think this has something to do with him?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned off all the lights in the house. "We're leaving," she said firmly. Elijah barely had time to grab his shoes before she ushered him toward the back door. "Mom, what if it's just some random car?" She stopped for a second, looking at him with something close to fear in her eyes. "Elijah, we're not taking any chances." Something about the way she said it sent chills down his spine. They slipped out the back door, moving quickly but quietly. His mother had parked their second car, a beat-up old sedan, in the alley behind their house. As soon as they got in, she drove off without turning on the headlights. Elijah looked back. The SUV was still there, still running, watching. His mother's hands gripped the wheel tightly. "Elijah," she said, her voice shaking, "you need to be careful." Elijah swallowed hard, because deep down, he already knew. This wasn't over. Judge Lancaster had just made his first move, and whatever came next, it was going to be worse. The air in the car was thick with tension. Elijah's mother drove in silence, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror every few seconds. They had been on the road for nearly 20 minutes, weaving through different streets, making random turns. Elijah sat still, his mind racing. That SUV wasn't just a coincidence. Someone had been watching them, and they both knew exactly who was behind it. Judge Lancaster. The man had been humiliated in front of the entire country, but instead of fading into the shadows, he was already making his next move. Elijah clenched his fists. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice low. His mother took a deep breath. "We're going to a safe place." "Safe place?" Elijah's eyebrows furrowed. His mother didn't answer right away. She turned onto an old side street, dimly lit by flickering streetlights, and pulled into the driveway of a small brick house. Elijah stared at it. He had never been here before. His mother finally looked at him. "We're staying with Gloria for now." Gloria, the woman she had called when the SUV showed up. Elijah's stomach twisted. He wasn't sure why, but something about this felt serious. His mother turned off the engine and exhaled. "Come on." They stepped out of the car and walked up to the door. Before his mother could knock, it swung open. A woman in her mid-50s stood there, wrapped in a robe, her dark brown eyes scanning the street behind them before motioning them inside. "Get in," she whispered. Elijah stepped inside, taking in the small but cozy house. The place smelled like cinnamon and old books. A wooden cross hung on the wall, next to a shelf stacked with legal documents. Gloria shut the door and locked it before turning to them. "Tell me exactly what happened." His mother explained everything. The black SUV, the way it just sat there, the way it never moved even after they left. Gloria's lips pressed into a thin line. "I knew that man was dangerous, but I didn't think he'd move this fast." Elijah's jaw clenched. "What do you mean?" Gloria sighed and motioned for them to sit. "Judge Lancaster has been untouchable for years. He's had complaints filed against him before, but nothing ever stuck. People who went up against him, well, let's just say they regretted it." A chill ran down Elijah's spine. His mother frowned. "Regretted it how?" Gloria hesitated. Then she leaned in closer, lowering her voice. Strange things started happening to them. Some lost their jobs. Others got arrested for things they didn't do. A few even had their homes broken into. But the worst ones? She swallowed hard. They disappeared. Elijah's heart skipped a beat. His mother's eyes widened. Disappeared? Gloria nodded. People just stop showing up to work. Stop answering their phones. Families leave town without warning. No explanations. No investigations. Elijah's mind reeled. Judge Lancaster wasn't just a bad judge. He was a man with power. A man with connections. And now, he was after them. Gloria sighed. You two need to lay low. You embarrassed a very powerful man, and he doesn't forgive easily. Elijah swallowed. What do we do? Gloria looked at him. You be smart. You be careful. And you don't go anywhere alone. Elijah nodded, but deep down, he knew something else. He wasn't just going to lay low. He had already taken the first shot. Now, it was time to finish this. The next morning, Elijah woke up on Gloria's couch. The house was quiet. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting soft lines across the floor. For a moment, he almost forgot everything that had happened. Almost. Then his phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number. You made a big mistake. Elijah's stomach dropped. Before he could react, another message appeared. Unknown number. You won't see it coming. His fingers trembled slightly as he gripped the phone. This wasn't an empty threat. It was a promise. His mother walked in from the kitchen, a cup of coffee in her hand. When she saw the look on his face, she frowned. Elijah? He hesitated, then handed her the phone. She read the messages, and her face went pale. Gloria walked in, noticing their expressions. What's wrong? Elijah's mother handed her the phone. Gloria's eyes narrowed as she scanned the messages. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she muttered. Elijah felt his pulse quicken. What do we do now? Gloria was silent for a moment. Then she looked at him with a firm expression. We fight back. Elijah blinked. How? Gloria set the phone down. Judge Lancaster thinks he can scare you into silence. But what he doesn't realize is that we still have something he doesn't. Elijah frowned. What's that? Gloria smiled faintly. The truth. Elijah sat up straighter. Gloria continued. You exposed him once, Elijah. But there's more to dig up. I know people. Journalists. Lawyers. People who've been waiting for years to take him down. They just needed someone to strike the first blow. Elijah felt a fire ignite in his chest. He had already started this fight. And now, he wasn't going to stop. His mother, still holding his phone, looked at the messages one more time. Then, with a deep breath, she deleted them. She met Elijah's gaze. If we do this, we do it smart. No mistakes. Elijah nodded. Because now, it wasn't just about his case. It was about everyone Judge Lancaster had ever hurt. And Elijah Carter was going to make sure the whole world knew the truth, even if it put him in more danger than ever before. Elijah's heart pounded as he sat at Gloria's kitchen table, staring at the legal documents spread out in front of him. Names, case numbers, sentencing details, all proof that Judge Lancaster had been unfairly punishing black and brown defendants for years. This is insane, he muttered, flipping through the pages. How did nobody stop him? Gloria sighed, sipping her coffee. Because power protects power, Elijah. Lancaster had friends in high places, people who covered for him. Complaints got buried. Evidence disappeared. And the people who spoke out? She shook her head. They learned the hard way to keep quiet. Elijah's mother sat beside him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. But now it's different, she said. He's been exposed. People are watching. Gloria nodded. Exactly. And that's why we have to move fast. Before he finds a way to clean up his mess. Elijah swallowed hard. He had already humiliated Lancaster once, but that was just the beginning. If they really wanted to take him down, they needed more. Something undeniable. Something that would make it impossible for Lancaster to recover. Elijah leaned forward. What's the plan? Gloria pulled out her phone and tapped on the screen. I reached out to an old friend, Terry Lawson. He's an investigative journalist. He's been looking into Lancaster for years, but never had enough to go public. With what you found in court, plus this, She gestured to the documents. He finally has enough to run a full expose. Elijah's pulse quickened. A full investigation. A nationwide scandal. Lancaster wouldn't just lose his position. He'd lose everything. When Gloria put the phone on speaker, it rang twice before a deep voice answered. Gloria, you sure about this? I'm sure, Terry, she said. And so is Elijah Carter. There was a pause. Then Terry said, Kid, you're about to make some powerful enemies. Elijah took a deep breath. I think I already have. Terry chuckled. Fair enough. Meet me tonight, 10 p.m. Warehouse District. We'll talk in person. Gloria frowned. Terry, that's late. You sure it's safe? It's safer than meeting in broad daylight when Lancaster's got eyes everywhere, Terry said. I'll send the address. Come alone. The call ended. Elijah exchanged a glance with his mother. Something about this felt dangerous. But danger was already coming for him. And if he wanted to survive it, he had to hit first. That night, Elijah slipped out of Gloria's house with his hoodie pulled over his head. His mother hadn't wanted him to go alone, but he insisted. If Lancaster's people were watching them, they'd expect him to move with protection. Going alone made him harder to track. At least, that's what he told himself. The warehouse district was eerily quiet. Streetlights flickered, casting long shadows over the cracked pavement. Elijah's phone buzzed. Terry's text, Dock 7. Side entrance. Come quick. Elijah spotted the entrance. A rusted metal door with chipped paint. He hesitated for just a second before pushing it open. Inside, the air smelled like oil and dust. Stacks of wooden crates lined the walls. A single light bulb flickered overhead. Terry? Elijah called softly. A figure stepped out from the shadows. It was a man in his 40s, wearing a dark jacket, his face partially hidden by the dim light. You're braver than I thought, kid, Terry said. Most people would have run by now. Elijah crossed his arms. Running doesn't solve anything. Terry smirked. Good answer. He pulled out a folder and handed it to Elijah. I've been digging since the moment you exposed Lancaster in court, he said. And I found something big. Elijah flipped the folder open. His eyes widened. Bank records. Wire transfers. Large sums of money moving between accounts connected to Lancaster. Elijah's breath caught. This isn't just about unfair sentencing. He's getting paid. Terry nodded. Exactly. Private prison companies, shady politicians, they're all connected. Lancaster was making money off of locking kids like you up. Elijah felt sick. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was a system, one that had been thriving for years. Terry's voice dropped. With this, we don't just take down Lancaster. We take down everyone who protected him. Elijah clenched his fists. This was it. This was the proof they needed. But before he could say anything, the sound of screeching tires outside made them both freeze. Terry's eyes darkened. Get down. Elijah ducked behind a crate just as the warehouse doors burst open. Footsteps echoed against the concrete floor. Voices. Low. Menacing. I know you're in here, a man called. Elijah's breath hitched. The voice was familiar. Judge Lancaster's bailiff. Terry pulled out his phone and whispered, We have to move. Now. Elijah's heart pounded as he peeked around the crate. 3 men, all dressed in black, all carrying something under their coats. Guns. Elijah felt cold fear creep up his spine. Lancaster had made his move. And if Elijah didn't get out of there fast, he wouldn't make it out at all. Elijah's breath came in short, quiet bursts as he pressed himself flat against the crate. Terry crouched beside him, his jaw clenched tight. The men had spread out, their heavy boots thudding against the concrete. You should have stayed quiet, kid. The bailiff's voice rang out. Judge Lancaster doesn't take kindly to people who don't know their place. Elijah's hands clenched into fists. His place? That was exactly the problem. People like Lancaster thought they could decide where someone like him belonged. Not this time. Terry's fingers tapped lightly against Elijah's arm, a signal. Move on my cue. Elijah gave a small nod. Terry slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. A lighter. Without hesitation, he flicked it on and tossed it toward a pile of crates stacked near the entrance. The second it hit the ground, The flames caught onto a few stray papers. "Fire!" one of the men shouted. The flickering light cast long, dancing shadows against the walls. For a split second, the men were distracted. That was all the time they needed. Terry grabbed Elijah's arm and bolted toward the back exit. "Stop them!" A gunshot rang out. The bullet slammed into a metal beam just inches from Elijah's head. He swallowed a scream, his legs pumping harder as they sprinted toward the door. Terry reached it first and shoved it open. Cold night air rushed in as they burst out into the alley behind the warehouse. "This way," Terry whispered harshly, pointing toward an abandoned car lot. Elijah ran, his lungs burning, his heart slamming against his ribs. The men were behind them now, their shouts getting closer. But then, sirens. Loud, piercing. Red and blue lights flooded the alleyway, bouncing off the warehouse walls. Tires screeched as two police cruisers whipped around the corner, blocking the entrance. Elijah skidded to a stop, his chest heaving. Terry cursed under his breath. Not good. The bailiff and his men halted, exchanging uneasy glances. A voice boomed through a police speaker. "Hands where we can see them." For a moment, nobody moved. Then, in a slow, calculated motion, the bailiff raised his hands. Elijah's stomach twisted. Something wasn't right. Then he saw it. The smirk on the bailiff's face. Like he knew something they didn't. And that's when Elijah realized. The police weren't here to save them. They were part of it. Minutes later, Elijah and Terry sat handcuffed in the back of a police cruiser. The officers hadn't even asked questions. No one had checked the warehouse for the evidence Terry had gathered. This was a setup. Elijah's hands shook as he looked out the window. The bailiff was talking to one of the officers, his smirk never leaving his face. Terry exhaled sharply. "They're taking us straight to Lancaster." Elijah felt a cold wave of dread wash over him. "What do we do?" he whispered. Terry turned his head slightly, his eyes hard. "We stay calm. We think." Elijah forced himself to take a deep breath. There had to be a way out of this. Then, just as the car started moving, his phone buzzed in his pocket. His eyes widened. They hadn't taken his phone. Gloria, his mom, the journalists. Someone could help them. But how was he supposed to send a message without the officers noticing? Then it hit him. He turned to Terry. "Can you fake a seizure?" Terry blinked. "What?" Elijah's voice was urgent. "If you pretend to have a seizure, they'll have to stop the car. That'll give me a few seconds to send a message." Terry hesitated, then nodded. Without warning, he threw himself against the seat, his body convulsing violently. His head smacked against the window, and he let out a strangled gasp. The officer driving cursed. "What the hell?" The car swerved to the side of the road. The second they stopped, Elijah yanked his phone from his pocket, his fingers moving fast. "Help. Taken by cops. They're with Lancaster. Warehouse District." He sent it to Gloria. Then, for good measure, he sent it to his mother. And then, he powered the phone off and shoved it under the seat. Just as the back door swung open and the officer yanked him out. "Out of the car, Carter," the cop growled. Elijah stumbled onto the pavement, heart racing. The bailiff stood nearby, arms crossed, watching with amusement. Terry groaned, playing up his act. Hospital," he mumbled. The officer sneered. "Nice try." Then he grabbed Elijah's collar and shoved him forward. "Let's go," he said. "Judge Lancaster's waiting for you." Elijah's stomach twisted. They were taking him straight to the man who wanted him gone. But he had one thing Lancaster didn't know. Help was already on the way. And Elijah Carter wasn't going down without a fight. Elijah's wrists burned where the handcuffs dug into his skin. The officer shoved him forward, forcing him toward an unmarked black car parked just ahead. Terry was right behind him, still clutching his stomach, breathing hard as he kept up the act of being sick. The bailiff chuckled. "You thought you were smart, huh?" He leaned in close, his breath hot against Elijah's ear. "You don't even know the game you're playing." Elijah didn't flinch. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing his fear. Instead, he forced a smirk. "If I don't know the game, why are you so scared?" The bailiff's face twisted with rage. For a second, Elijah thought he was going to hit him. But then, The man just gritted his teeth and stepped back. Get in the car. Elijah hesitated. His mind raced. He needed to buy more time. Stalling was his only option. So, he did the only thing he could think of. He tripped. His foot hooked around the curb, and he went down hard, slamming onto the pavement. Damn it, the officer grumbled. Terry, catching on immediately, gasped and stumbled too, landing right next to Elijah. Elijah groaned loudly, rolling onto his back. Man, I think I broke something. The officer sighed. Get up. I can't. Elijah groaned, clutching his ankle. I think it's sprained. God, you kids are pathetic, the bailiff muttered. But the trick worked. Seconds turned into a minute, and every minute counted. Then, a siren. Not the deep, commanding wail of a police cruiser. This was different. A news van screeched around the corner, headlights flashing. Elijah's heart leaped. Gloria. The bailiff and officers stiffened. The van skidded to a stop, and before the engine had even cut off, the side door flew open. A man with a camera jumped out, followed by a tall woman in a dark blazer. The reporter. Terry gasped dramatically. Oh, look. It's the press. The officer standing over Elijah swore under his breath. The reporter marched toward them, her microphone in hand. Elijah Carter, she called out, her voice sharp with purpose. Are you being detained without cause? Elijah sat up, rubbing his wrist. Sure feels like it. The camera zoomed in. The officer who had been about to shove Elijah into the car hesitated. His hand twitched near his gun, but he knew he couldn't do anything with the cameras rolling. The reporter turned toward the bailiff. Sir, would you like to explain why a minor, who is supposed to be receiving a fair trial, is being transported in an unmarked vehicle in handcuffs without a warrant? The bailiff's jaw clenched. He looked around, realizing they were trapped. The world was watching, and Lancaster's people weren't ready for that. We're done here, the officer muttered, tossing the keys to Elijah's cuffs at the bailiff before storming toward his cruiser. One by one, the officers peeled away, their faces tight with frustration. The bailiff stood frozen for a second longer, his fists clenched at his sides. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. Elijah's chest rose and fell with relief. They had won. This round, at least. The reporter turned back to him. Elijah, do you have anything you'd like to say to the public? Elijah licked his dry lips. His pulse was still pounding, but he knew exactly what to say. Yeah, he said. He turned, looking straight into the camera. To Judge Lancaster, I'm still here. And I'm not going anywhere. The moment those words left his mouth, Elijah knew there was no turning back. This war had just gone national, and he was ready for whatever came next. Elijah barely had time to breathe before his phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. His blood ran cold. He swallowed hard and locked the screen, stuffing the phone back in his pocket. He didn't need to guess who it was. Judge Lancaster wasn't done with him. And now, after calling him out on live television, Elijah knew the man was furious. The reporter was still talking, asking questions, but Elijah couldn't focus. His mind was racing. They had bought themselves some time, but that was all. Time. Judge Lancaster was powerful. He had cops, lawyers, and people in the shadows willing to do his dirty work. And Elijah? He was just a kid. But that didn't mean he was going to back down. Terry clapped a hand on Elijah's shoulder. You all right, kid? Elijah forced a nod. Yeah. The reporter lowered her microphone. We should get you somewhere safe. Lancaster's people won't take this lightly. Gloria stepped forward, nodding in agreement. I've got a place, she said. Somewhere he won't find us. Elijah hesitated. What about my mom? She's already on her way, Gloria said. We need to move now. The weight of everything pressed on Elijah's chest, but he nodded. This wasn't over. Not even close. The safe house was an old apartment on the edge of town, the kind of place no one paid attention to. The furniture was old, the lights dim, but it was quiet. Safe. For now. Elijah sat on the couch, staring at the files Terry had brought him. Bank transfers. Bribes. Corrupt cops. Judge Lancaster wasn't just a bad judge. He was running an entire operation. Elijah rubbed his temples. How do we stop him? Terry exhaled sharply. We take this to the right people. We leak everything. The media's already on our side. If we push hard enough, Lancaster won't have anywhere to hide. Elijah nodded. But we need to move fast. Gloria sat across from him. There's one more thing, she said carefully. We need someone from the inside. Elijah frowned. What do you mean? A witness, she said. Someone who worked with Lancaster. Someone who can confirm everything. Terry sat up. I might have someone. Elijah's heart pounded. This could be it. The final piece. The one thing that could bring Lancaster crashing down. Terry pulled out his phone. His name's Marcus Tillman. He used to work in Lancaster's office. But then, a few years ago, he disappeared. Elijah's stomach twisted. Disappeared? Terry nodded. Word is, he ran. He knew too much. Gloria crossed her arms. So where is he now? Terry's fingers flew across his phone screen. I've been tracking some old accounts. He's still out there. And I think I know where to find him. Elijah swallowed. They had come too far to stop now. If Marcus Tillman had the final piece of the puzzle, they had to get to him before Lancaster did. Because one thing was certain. If Lancaster found him first, he wouldn't be alive for much longer. Elijah sat in the back seat of Gloria's car, his heart pounding as the city lights blurred past the window. They were heading deep into the outskirts of town, to a place where people disappeared when they didn't want to be found. Marcus Tillman was their only chance to end Lancaster for good. But that meant getting to him before Lancaster's people did. Gloria kept both hands tight on the wheel, her jaw clenched. If Marcus is alive, he's not going to trust us right away. Terry, sitting in the front passenger seat, nodded. He'll be scared. And he should be. He turned to Elijah. You sure you're ready for this? Elijah exhaled. Does it matter? Terry smirked. Fair point. The GPS guided them down a long, deserted road lined with abandoned buildings. Finally, they pulled up to an old gas station with flickering neon lights. This is it? Elijah asked. Terry checked his phone. This is where the last transaction on his account was made. If he's still around, he won't be far. Elijah glanced around. The place looked empty, but something about it made his skin crawl. Gloria parked the car. Stay close. The three of them stepped out, the cold night air wrapping around them. Elijah's hands clenched into fists. He could feel it. They weren't alone. Inside the gas station, the clerk barely looked up from his magazine. Terry approached the counter. We're looking for someone. The clerk didn't even blink. Aren't we all? Terry sighed. Marcus Tillman. You know him? At the mention of the name, the clerk's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. Elijah noticed. The clerk knew something. Gloria stepped forward. We're not here to hurt him. We're here to help. For a long moment, the clerk just stared at them. Then he muttered, back alley, dumpster. Elijah frowned. Dumpster? The clerk's eyes flickered toward the door. That's where you'll find what's left of him. Elijah's stomach dropped. No, not again. Without thinking, he ran outside. Elijah, wait. Gloria called after him. But he didn't stop. He sprinted around the side of the gas station, where a single flickering streetlight cast a dim glow over the alley. And then he saw it. A body, lying motionless next to an open dumpster. Elijah's breath caught in his throat. No, no, no. Terry and Gloria caught up just as Elijah dropped to his knees beside the man. Blood. It was fresh. Elijah, Gloria whispered. Be careful. Elijah's hands shook as he reached forward. Then, a sharp gasp. The man's eyes flickered open. Elijah's heart slammed against his ribs. He wasn't dead. Marcus Tillman was still alive. Barely. Help, Marcus croaked. His lips were cracked, his face covered in bruises. Elijah's hands moved fast. We need to get him out of here. Gloria knelt beside him. Who did this to you? Marcus coughed, wincing in pain. Then he whispered two words that made Elijah's blood run cold. Lancaster knows. Terry swore under his breath. Gloria's face darkened. We have to go. Now. Elijah helped Marcus sit up. His body was weak, but his grip was tight. Marcus turned his bloodshot eyes to Elijah. He's coming for you. Elijah swallowed hard. He already knew. But now, there was no turning back. Because if Lancaster wanted a war, Elijah was ready. Elijah's arms burned as he helped Marcus into the back seat of the car. The man was barely conscious, his head slumping forward as he muttered incoherently. Gloria revved the engine, her eyes darting toward the road. We don't have much time. If Lancaster's people did this to him, they're probably still close. Terry pulled his gun from his jacket, checking the clip before snapping it back in. I'll ride in the back with him. If someone tries to stop us, we don't slow down. Elijah swallowed hard and slid into the back seat beside Marcus. The moment the doors shut, Gloria hit the gas. Tires screeched against the pavement as they sped away from the gas station. Elijah glanced back at Marcus. His breathing was shallow, but he was fighting to stay awake. Marcus, Elijah said, leaning closer. We need you to tell us what you know. Marcus's eyelids fluttered. His lips trembled. He's got people everywhere. His voice was weak, but the fear in it was real. Cops, judges, politicians. They're all in on it. Elijah's chest tightened. Do you have proof? Marcus swallowed hard, his fingers twitching. Locker. 347. Train station. Terry leaned forward. What's in the locker? Marcus coughed, his entire body shaking. Files. Recordings. Names. Everything. Elijah felt his heart pounding. This was it. The final piece of the puzzle. They had proof. If they could get to that locker before Lancaster did, they could take him down for good. Gloria turned onto the highway, gripping the wheel tightly. We'll get him to a safe house first. Then we go for the locker. But then, headlights appeared behind them. Elijah stiffened. Terry cursed under his breath. We've got company. A black SUV. Speeding up. Closing in. Gloria's fingers clenched around the wheel. Hold on. She yanked the car onto an exit ramp, tires screeching as they weaved through traffic. Elijah's pulse raced. The SUV followed. Gloria swerved down a side street, trying to lose them. Then, bang. A bullet shattered the back window. Elijah ducked, his arms covering his head. Terry cursed. They're shooting at us. Marcus groaned, barely able to stay upright. Gloria took another sharp turn, the car bouncing as it hit a pothole. The SUV didn't stop. Elijah's mind raced. They needed to fight back. He looked at Terry. How good is your aim? Terry smirked. Good enough. He rolled down the window and leaned out, gun in hand. Bang, bang. Tires screeched behind them. The SUV swerved, but it kept coming. Elijah's heart pounded. We need to stop them before they stop us. Gloria nodded. Brace yourselves. Then she did something crazy. She slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop sent everyone jerking forward, and the SUV behind them had no time to react. Crash. The black vehicle slammed into their bumper, the impact sending it skidding sideways into a light pole. Elijah gasped, his ears ringing. Gloria didn't hesitate. She floored the gas, speeding away before anyone in the SUV could recover. Terry grinned. Remind me never to doubt your driving skills. Gloria exhaled sharply. Let's just get out of here. Elijah glanced at Marcus. The man was still conscious, barely. They had survived the chase. But it wasn't over. Not until they got to that locker. Not until Lancaster was finished. And Elijah knew one thing for sure. They were running out of time. The safe house was a small, run-down cabin on the edge of town, hidden deep in the woods. The moment Gloria pulled the car onto the gravel driveway, Terry and Elijah jumped out to help Marcus. Marcus groaned as they lifted him from the back seat. His body was weak, but his grip on Elijah's arm was strong. Locker. 347, he whispered. You have to get there now. Elijah nodded, his chest tight. We will. Gloria unlocked the door, and they carried Marcus inside, laying him down on the worn-out couch. The place smelled like old wood and dust, but it was safe. For now, Gloria knelt beside him. You need rest. I'll call a doctor I trust. Marcus shook his head weakly. No time. Lancaster knows. Terry looked at Elijah. He's right. The second Lancaster realizes we got him, he's going straight for that locker. Elijah's fists clenched. They had come too far to lose now. He turned to Gloria. You stay here with Marcus. Terry and I will get the files. Gloria hesitated. It's too dangerous. Elijah's jaw tightened. Everything we've done means nothing if we don't get those files. Gloria exhaled sharply, then nodded. Be careful. Terry checked his gun, giving Elijah a smirk. Guess we're taking a field trip. Elijah forced a smirk back, but his stomach twisted with nerves. This was it. Their last chance to stop Lancaster. The train station was massive, its high ceilings echoing with the voices of late-night travelers. The air smelled of coffee and rain-soaked pavement. Elijah and Terry moved fast, keeping their heads low. Locker 347. It was on the far end of the station, near the service entrance. Elijah's pulse pounded as they approached. There it was. A plain, metal locker, just like the others. Terry glanced around, his hand resting near his gun. Hurry. Elijah's fingers shook as he twisted the combination lock. It clicked open. He yanked the door wide, and his breath caught. Inside, there was a thick manila folder and a flash drive. Elijah grabbed both, shoving them into his jacket. Then, a voice. Well. Elijah turned. His stomach dropped. Judge Lancaster stood a few feet away, flanked by two men in black suits. He was smiling, like he had been expecting them. Elijah's mind raced. This was a trap. They had played right into his hands. Terry tensed beside him, his fingers tightening around his gun. How the hell did you get here so fast? Lancaster chuckled. Did you really think I wouldn't be watching? He took a slow step forward. I knew you'd come for this. Elijah swallowed hard. Terry shifted slightly, positioning himself between Elijah and the judge. You really think you can stop us now? The whole world is watching you. Lancaster's smirk widened. The world watches what I let them watch. Elijah's fingers tightened around the flash drive in his pocket. This was bad. Really bad. Lancaster motioned to his men. Take the files. Kill the boy. Elijah's breath hitched. Then, bang. Terry fired the first shot. The bullet hit one of Lancaster's men in the shoulder, sending him crashing into a bench. Chaos erupted. Lancaster ducked behind a column as his other man pulled a gun. Terry grabbed Elijah and shoved him behind a row of lockers. Run. Elijah's legs felt frozen. I'm not leaving you. Terry grabbed his collar. You have the files. If you stay, this was all for nothing. Another gunshot rang out, chipping the metal near Elijah's head. Terry pushed him. Go. Elijah's feet finally moved. He bolted toward the exit, heart slamming against his ribs. Footsteps pounded behind him. Lancaster's man was chasing him. Elijah weaved through the crowd, shoving past commuters. His breath burned in his throat. Then, a hand grabbed his hoodie, yanked him back. Elijah gasped, kicking wildly. The man sneered. Nice try, kid. Then a fist slammed into his stomach. Pain exploded through Elijah's body. He collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The flash drive. He couldn't lose it. Through the haze of pain, he felt the man grab for his jacket. No. With the last of his strength, Elijah reached into his pocket and smashed his phone onto the ground. Crack. The man hesitated. Elijah didn't. He grabbed a handful of shattered glass and shoved it into the man's face. The man screamed, stumbling back. Elijah ran. He burst through the station doors, lungs burning. A car screeched to a stop in front of him. Elijah. Gloria. She had come. Elijah threw himself into the car, slamming the door shut. Drive, he gasped. Gloria hit the gas. The train station disappeared behind them. Elijah's head spun. His ribs ached. His hands were shaking. But he had it. The files. The proof. Judge Lancaster had lost. Or so he thought. Because deep in Elijah's gut, he knew. The man wasn't done yet. And the worst was still coming. Elijah's fingers trembled as he pulled the flash drive from his jacket, staring at it like it was the most dangerous thing in the world. Because it was. Everything Lancaster had done, every bribe, every crooked ruling, every life he had ruined, was on this tiny piece of metal, and now it was in Elijah's hands. Gloria's car sped through the empty streets, the city lights flickering past the windows. Terry was still at the train station. Elijah's stomach twisted. He had left him behind.